Alright, so the final video I'm going to make about projects is, well, I'll probably have one about how to do Screencast-O-Matic, but besides that is what exactly should be in your presentation. So one thing is that I gave you way more slides than you actually need to present. And that's because there's stuff I wanted you to do along the way, and I wanted to give you points for and credit for doing. So one thing that you might want to do is when you're in the project area and you have your group slides, you may want to just go ahead and make a copy, because I haven't finished grading all of those like the bits and pieces that you need. So you want to leave those there. You don't want to get rid of them. But you want to have this, another copy, so that way you can mess around with this, and you can leave the one for me to grade alone, and you can call this, like, presentation. So I'm going to rename this one presentation example, instead of whatever the heck the original name was. So you'll make it presentation and then group or whatever the heck. Doesn't matter what your name is. As long as you have it, you could even copy it into your own Google Drive and present from there. I don't care, because the presentation piece, I'm not going to grade your slides. I'm going to grade what you actually present in class. So that's first. Now, one thing I just want to point out is that you can change the background. You can change the layout or theme of your slides. You can choose something that's cuter if you want to. So you don't have to go with this terrible black white. You can add something cute. You're like, okay, doing stuff with stats. Or there's other themes that you can actually import if you want to get real crazy. There's this great website called Slides Carnival. I'm going to tell you about this because it'll be helpful for other classes if you have to do another presentation. Slides Carnival has PowerPoint and Google slide templates. So you can just look through, and you can even choose by like what you're looking for. Okay, I want something formal because we're doing a real presentation. So, ooh, this one's pretty. If you click on that, you can actually go to preview and download, and you can use as a Google slide theme. So, yeah, it's moving slow. But anyways, just wanted to point out that there are ways to get pretty ones. You're not using the basic slides that are available within Google. But again, feel free to change it. You don't have to. There are no points associated with how cute your presentation is, though it may make me happier. So, so anyways, I don't remember how to save this as a theme, and I can't think at the moment, so I'm just going to be like not doing that. But anyways, slides that you don't need. Right away, we could probably get rid of group roles if there's no reason to keep them, right? You can keep them in. You can say, instead of making it group roles, you could just have it be like a group members. If you wanted to take a moment during your presentation to introduce everyone. So there we go. Lame, but whatever. We don't have to have any numbers anymore. Purpose. Throw in your purpose here. You can go ahead and combine purpose and background if you want, if it makes sense. One thing I want to make a note in here is that a lot of you in your original slides, this is very verbose. And if you're doing a true presentation, if you're doing the write-up, great. You can just copy and paste that stuff. But if you're doing a presentation, you want to have just bullets or quick things that people can read, and you're not going to read them off, because please don't. It makes me crazy. So, all right, you can put something in here. You know, we were concerned that students who work more may not have enough time to dedicate to studying. Or you don't, because you can just say this while we're on this slide, right? You may want to have some stats you got from that other article, like a previous study found that, and then just quickly summarize it. You don't need the actual link anymore. I gave you points for actually looking it up and giving me the link in the background information. I'm not looking for citations now. I'm more looking for a quick, like, hey, here's what we were going to study. Here's some background information we found about it. We wanted to see if this was true for MESA students as well. Since I combined those, I can get rid of that. You do want to have your data collection methods. We sampled MESA students by using paper questionnaires during the middle of the day outside of MESA comments. And if you want to, you can either put your limitations here as they were originally, or you can just talk about them. So some of the issues with this, well, we did it during the middle of the day, so we're missing out on students who weren't there. There were a lot of students who decided not to participate. You can throw all that into your presentation. Survey questions / variables collected, you may just want to go ahead and give some, like a quick screen cap if you used a form or a piece of paper survey, and just quickly put your questions. So throw them in here so that people can see exactly what you asked. And then the research questions, you can delete this slide. You don't really need that. We'll talk about that when you actually do your pieces. I meant to delete this 3. So we have our group members, which again I could delete if I wanted, some purpose or introduction into what we did and why, how we collected data, what exactly our data collection form looked like, and then the data itself. Now here originally you guys have links to your data. That doesn't make sense to present. Alright, so this is going to be a hodgepodge of slides 8 and 9. You can mention data cleaning, but there's no reason to do anything with that. You're going to want to have in here some summary of your data. We sampled or surveyed 60 students. And then some summaries about them. I hate freaking spacing. It drives me crazy. Sorry. No, you're still not mad at me? Where is this? Remove space. Thank you. Okay. And I could, ooh, I didn't want the bullet there. Ugh, I'll fix it later. And you could say something like, okay, in addition, 54% were female. The average GPA, 3.2, whatever the heck it was, with a minimum of 2.0 and a maximum of 4.0. Like basically you're just continuing to summarize your data here. Now, you can use graphs if you want. If you want to give your GPAs and show them as skewed to the left or whatever it might be, you can add graphs. You can just summarize them with bullet points like this. You can add your tables, but keep it concise. I don't want you to go through every single variable. You can, when you're presenting, you can basically just hit the highlights, like especially if your overall research question was about working in GPA, you'll probably want to, like, you can put all of this stuff up on the screen, but you probably only want to chat about the average GPA and say 60% of students worked full-time, 30% part-time, and 10% did not work. So you might, or your basically don't spend forever describing every variable because that's boring, and as long as you have a bullet or a graph up there, we can do a little of that ourselves. So you might need more than one slide for this. You might want to break them up, especially if you have some nice graphs to go with it. But that's what we want. One quick describing. Because if you look at the project rubric, you gave compelling reasons and background. Great. You talked about your study design, and then you did some stuff to talk about the sample collected. You probably already chatted a little bit about limitations in your study design, and now we're ready to start getting into the rest of this. So for the rest of your presentation, slide 10 really doesn't matter. I should have assigned this earlier, right before exam 3, so that we could have seen exam 3 in real life. And that's really what this was about. So I don't care about those going into your final presentation. So you can delete all of those slides right off the bat. Unless there's something truly interesting that you found and you want to keep it in there, great. But really, we can move on to slide 11, looking at our relationships, which is, in the rubric, exploring relationships. So I'm going to delete the names and the title numbers, and we'll just kind of go through each of these, and I'm presenting, okay? And each person might want to present their own. So I looked at gender and type of phone. So here's the graph. It looks like, people with an Apple tend to be more male than people with an Android, but it's a very, very close percentage, and when we ran our test for independence, we actually found that there was enough evidence to show that there was a relationship between the two. And then, okay, I looked at birthplace and height. So as you can see from the box plots, it appears that people born outside the U.S. had the lowest heights, whereas people born in California had the highest. And when we ran our ANOVA, we had a p-value of 0.08, which was barely significant at a 10% level, but at a 10% level, we have the evidence to show the average height does differ based on things. And you can just keep going with this. Everybody will present their findings from 11. And then 12, the conclusion slide. This is, again, just some quick bullets of what you found. So conclusions, we found significant relationships between blah, blah, blah. However, and then maybe which we didn't find significant relationships between. You could do this in a table, or even some of these trends we found. People born outside the U.S. Tended to have a lower average height than those born in the U.S. So you could put down the conclusions that you found from looking at this data and these relationships. Just quickly summarize them all. And then you might want to put some limitations. This was a convenience sample, although you probably already talked about them. Blah, 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 blah. And then the last slide, which really matters, because again, on the rubric, you've explored relationships, your conclusions were in those slides, and then again in that last slide. And then the last thing I want to show is that you have some future steps about what you would do. So here's where we're doing our future work, and we're saying, ideally, I don't like that font. I mean, I like it, but I want to be in this text box. All right, ideally, all right, possible future work. What could we do? Maybe include students outside of Math 119 classes. I don't know. Increase our sample size. Those are some basic, easy ones. But also maybe thinking back to what were some other issues that I ran into? Maybe if I was too lazy to do this collapsing, or when I was looking at height versus mom height, we could have gone ahead and said, we could have included more variables. I could have separated this by gender. What other things would you really like to look at? I wish I had had this. So that's another thing, also collect data on, let's say, country of origin. If I'm thinking about those heights, right, maybe I'm thinking, okay, perhaps people are shorter outside the U.S., but maybe it depends on where, and maybe if I just had U.S. versus country, or country of birth, or something like that. I don't know, just thinking about possible changes that you would make to your data, or other analyses, run a linear regression on height and mom height. Stuff, whatever, right? So incorporate more variables into predicting GPA. So things like that, I wish I could have taken into account not just the type of work, but also what their average hours of work per week were. So maybe both of those combined make some sort of difference when it comes to GPA. So just trying to think through other things that you would have wished you could have done if you had had more time, if you knew a little bit more about statistics maybe, if you could have done this as an experiment, the gold standard. How could you have done this as an experiment? Is that even possible? So that's the presentation. Just kind of, like I said, delete some of those slides about the data and the data cleaning, delete all the slide 10 stuff, but do make sure that you copy this. So I still have slide 10, so I can go back and give you points for slide 10 if I haven't graded it or you didn't get full points. So do not delete it, just make a copy and make that copy for your presentation.